Everybody set? Hi, how are you? All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. Since the COVID-19 pandemic forced us to close our schools nearly 1 year ago, we have been working every single day to implement solutions that would allow our kids to return back into the classroom in a way that's safe for them, their families, our teachers, staff, and the entire CPS community. We have been doing that for the simple reason that remote learning doesn't work for everyone, especially our students most in need, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in important point in a moment. This includes our youngest students, our special needs students, and our low-income students. And a key part of our effort to get students back in the class has been engaging with the Chicago Teachers Union leadership, especially listening to their concerns and being laser focused on reaching an agreement that everyone is comfortable with. And of that course, that requires compromise on both sides. This effort has included more than 70 formal meetings since June, with these meetings occurring 7 days a week for the past 2 weeks. We have sought to address a broad range of issues. Issues which, since our schools first closed nearly a year ago, Dr. Jackson and her team have moved mountains to address, and address them they have. Dr. Jackson and the team have valiantly led CPS in its work to not only meet but exceed the recommendations for safe in-person learning established by the CDC, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and of course, the Chicago Department of Public Health, and supported by our leading public health experts, from Dr. Anthony Fauci in Washington, D.C., to our own Dr. Allison Arwady here at home. This has included investing now over $100 million to do so. These investments have gone into health screenings, temporary temperature checks at schools, provisions of hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, face coverings, PPE, regular cleaning, disinfecting protocols, and social distancing. And these have been in place for months. It also includes contact tracing and ventilation. And for that, Dr. Jackson and her team and all of CPS really deserves our unqualified praise. With this in mind, I want to reiterate, our schools are safe. Our schools are safe. We know that because we have studied what's happened in other school systems in our city, 40,000 plus, archdiocese, charter, and other private schools that have had some form of in-person learning since the fall. We have met or exceeded all of the protocols that they have put in place to mitigate any spread within schools. We also know that because for 3 weeks until last week, we had implemented our plan with pre-K and cluster teachers coming back into schools with students safely. So our schools are safe. Now, yesterday, for the first time, we thankfully received a set of agreements with CTU on 4 issues: health and safety protocols, ventilation, contact tracing, and health committees. These are important steps, to be sure, and I am grateful that we have those to the side, but we have a number of other open issues. And despite our full efforts to listen and stay at the table every single day, and we have and we will, we have other important open issues. So we need a renewed sense of urgency on the part of CTU leadership. And let me be clear, since we got those agreements yesterday, we have been at the table all day yesterday into the evening, and we've been waiting all day today for in-person negotiations to begin. We've been waiting on the CTU, and I have been directing my team Every hour on the hour, where are they? Why haven't they come back to us? What's going on? We need to get a deal done. That's actually what's been happening. Let me also address some misinformation that I think is out there. CPS has put out a comprehensive plan on every issue, those already resolved and those yet to be resolved. And Dr. already helped create that plan. This is a plan that is sensitive to the unique circumstances of our students, of our teachers, of our whole staff, the whole school community, and responds to their actual lived experience, regardless of what that is, what neighborhood they live in, what their underlying health conditions are or not. And we know that the plan works, again, because we had 3 weeks of proof positive that the plan works. What we should be working on every single day is how do we get our kids the best learning environment that we can? What do we do and how do we get there to respond to those 70,000 plus parents who said they want to bring their kids back to in-person learning? And let me be clear, of those 70,000, well over half, almost 3/4, are Black and Latinx kids. Let's be clear about that. Almost 3/4 of the families who opted to come back are Black and Latinx kids. I know we can get a deal done. I still think we can get a deal done today. And I've told my team, if it takes us staying up all night, let's get it done. But we need CTU to come back to the table. We need them at the table. We have to get a deal done. So there's no reason why that shouldn't happen. And educators, we need you. We know how much you love your kids. You wouldn't be teachers if you didn't. And we know you want to be with your kids. And you wouldn't be in this business if you didn't. And I want to give a special shout out to those educators who came in to schools last week despite being directed not to by the CTU leadership. We want you to come back. We need you to come back. And I want to thank those who have and will continue to. So I'll say it again. We absolutely can get a deal done. That's critically important. And I personally am doing everything that I can to make that happen. I push my team to be at the table, be ready. But CTU, please come back to the table today. We're waiting. We need you back at the table. Just this afternoon, I initiated a call with President Sharkey. Now, let me be clear. The call was cordial and productive. And I've seen some of the tweeting out there by people who weren't on the call. I will just say I'm disappointed that people are still, even in this situation, trying to stir and foment chaos and dissent. That's not what the call was. It was extraordinarily cordial. We agreed at the end of the call that we would keep the lines of communication open. There were no insults by either side. That's not who I am, and that's not who he is. It's unfortunate that the conversation has been mischaracterized in the way that it is. Now, parents, I want to say to you, and Dr. Jackson will go into more detail, but let me say this. Tomorrow, all teachers, pre-K through 8, and cluster teachers must report. If you do not have a approved accommodation, we expect to see you back in class. And in order to give the teachers an opportunity to get themselves ready for students, we're telling parents, come back and bring your kids to school on Tuesday. Now, we hope teachers will come back, but we need them to come back. We're directing them to come back. We've been asking them to come back every single day. They need to come back tomorrow without fail. Now, while in-person learning will not happen tomorrow, in the event that it is needed, We, again, encourage parents to send your kids to learning hubs, which will be open to support the students. Our hubs have been safety serving since this summer. Now, if you have more questions, please go to the CPS website. That's cps.edu/reopening. cps.edu/reopening. Let me say again, we expect all of our teachers who have not received a specific accommodation to come to school tomorrow. All of the CTU members. And those who do not report to work, and I hate to even go there, but we're going to have to take action. Let's avoid that. Let's avoid it in the first instance by getting a deal done tonight. Let's get a deal done. And that's the message that I gave to CTU President Jesse Sharkey. Well, folks, let me just reiterate why we feel so strongly about this. Let's review some of the data that we know about what's happening with remote learning. Since the beginning of the school year, enrollment at CPS has fallen significantly, with declines especially sharp in pre-K and kindergarten learners. Pre-K enrollment itself has fallen by over 34%. That's more than a third. Among our Latinx students, that drop is 29%. And among our Black students, that number is 44% drop. But as I said on Friday, the situation is even much worse than that. Among our students who are enrolled, 9.2% are not attending class at all, meaning they're not hooked up, they're not coming in person, and they're not coming virtually. That's just our district-wide average. In some schools, those numbers are significantly higher. Absenteeism is a breathtaking 21.2% for students in temporary living situations. And that's all despite the major efforts that we've made to find those students and bring them back, including multiple trips to homes themselves. But as hard as that is, the situation is still even worse. Since the start of the school year, there's been a district-wide increase in the number of children receiving Fs. With Black elementary school students are failing at a rate of 11% in reading. That's a threefold increase from last year. Latinx elementary school students are failing at reading at failing at math at a 9% rate. And the list goes on and on. So when people ask me, well, what's the big deal? Let's just keep kids remote. This is the big deal. Remote learning is failing too many of our kids. We have to think about their present, but also their future. That is why when we talk about this is a question of equity and making sure that we keep our kids front and center in this discussion, this is why. This data is devastating. Each one of those kids who are failing is not being able to live up to their God-given potential that could have lifelong consequences for them. That's why we're fighting so hard. This isn't about fighting the CTU. This is about fighting for our children. This is a union town. I'm a kid who grew up in a union household. Organized labor built this city. They are an important part of the fabric of who we are. We respect the right of workers to be organized. This is not what this is about. This is about whether or not we are going to live in a city where we see our children, particularly our most vulnerable, those children that are most in need. They need us desperately right now. We don't have a moment to waste, not with the numbers that we are seeing. We have to have a sense of urgency and passion because our children's lives are hanging in the balance. 70 times, 100 times, whatever it takes. We will be at the table. We have never left, and we will not leave until we get a deal done. But we need CTU leadership that have the same sense of urgency about the desperate state that our children are in. And if they do, we will get a deal done forthwith, within hours, not days, not weeks, hours. That's what is needed. That's what I am committed to. That's what this entire team and those behind us who support us every day. We're not resting. We're not sleeping. How could we when our children's lives are at stake in the way that they are? So teachers, we hear you, and we are doing everything we can to accommodate you. And again, I want to thank those teachers and staff and principals and assistant principals for being there, for being in our buildings every day since March. And for those teachers who keep coming in, thank you. Please talk to your leadership. Urge them to get a deal done quickly so that we can move on and be about the business of supporting our children and creating the most nurturing, vibrant learning environment possible for them, because this is what our school system should always be about. Nothing else. That is why we wake up every day and do what is necessary to support our children and their families. And with that, I'll ask Dr. Jackson to come to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. This is deeply disappointing for us as a school system at this time. Tomorrow, tens of thousands of CPS students were expected to come back into their classrooms after almost a year of being educated at home. That will not happen because CTU leadership has stood in the way of a safe and sensible reopening. Tomorrow will be the fourth consecutive day where teachers have been directed to remain home. And that makes 15 days in the past year and a half where CTU leadership has disrupted student learning. No one should be okay with that. The truth is the medical community has reached a consensus that schools are safe to reopen as long as we implement the mitigating strategies that we have talked about countless times at this podium, and Chicago Public Schools is ready to do that. So I think it's time that we listen to the professionals, follow the science, as we've said throughout this pandemic. We have to listen to people like Dr. Already, Dr. Fauci, and the CDC, all of whom have stated clearly that schools are safe to reopen. But instead, union leadership is ignoring inconvenient truths and inventing reasons why our students can't return to the classroom. There's a lot that has been said about reopening. The mayor just quoted a lot of numbers related to equity. If people don't want to listen to that, I say listen to the experts. If people don't want to listen to that, I say listen to the countless stories. This is an incredibly complicated issue, and that's illustrated by the different opinions and stories that are shared with me throughout this process. I remember at our roundtable in Belmont Cragen about a week and a half ago, listening to a mom who's also a healthcare professional who made it clear that she has to put routines in place for her children to access their education every day and then go out and put her life on the line as an essential worker to make sure that people are safe. We owe it to moms just like that, whether they are working in hospitals, nursing homes, grocery stores, in places all across the city, in the country that have reopened. We owe it to them to provide their kids with a safe place to learn. I've heard from moms who have been emailing me pictures of their kids trying on backpacks and getting ready to restart school. What do we tell them? That we couldn't figure it out? That we couldn't put together a plan that gives every single student and family a choice in Chicago Public Schools? What do we say to the dads who took time out of their schedule to go over to Andrew Jackson and paint markers on the ground so that the students know where to sign up to make sure that they're exercising proper social distancing? What do we say to the countless principals that have said to me, we are ready to reopen? You will hear people talk about our plan. We have a solid plan. I challenge anyone to look at that plan and tell me where CPS has missed the mark. If you believe that we can't implement the plan, I would direct you to the last 3 weeks where we safely reopened schools for pre-K students and students in our cluster program. And that opening was successful. And trust me, if it wasn't, you would have heard all about it. We must do everything within our power to give everybody an option in this district. Not just the people who agree with us, not just the people that are loud, but every single family needs an option. A lot has been made about the 80% that selected remote learning. But when you dig deeper into that number, that's not actually factual. We had thousands, tens of thousands of families that didn't even respond. Those are the families I'm worried about, because I guarantee you those are the same families of the students who aren't logging on every day. What about those children? As the mayor said countless times at this podium tonight, a deal is within reach. I am incredibly frustrated, not just as the leader of this system. I'm frustrated as a parent. My child was ready to return to school tomorrow. We can do this. Why should Chicago stand out when everybody else across the country has been able to safely do this? Why should CPS stand out when private and parochial schools in Chicago have been operating since the beginning of this school year? The time is now. We have moved past the debate about whether or not schools should reopen. The CDC study that was given out earlier this week proves to us that we can safely reopen schools, and all of the strategies that are listed are a part of the CPS plan. So tomorrow, as the mayor made in her comments, we are expecting all pre-K through 8th grade teachers to report to school, as well as teachers in our cluster program, unless you have an approved accommodation. Teachers and staff that fail to report to school tomorrow will have their access to Google Suites cut off at the end of the business day. We are doing this because this is one step in a long plan on our road to safely reopen our schools and at some point return to normalcy. We have started this process since the beginning of the school year. We've had principals, we've had people teaching in our schools, we've had countless activities happening in our schools. At the beginning of this year, we brought back pre-K students, we brought back students in our cluster program, and we did that successfully. Now it is time for our elementary school students that want an in-person option to have that option, and we intend to do that. My message to the teachers is that we're all on the same team. We all want the same thing. I truly believe that. We believe that our kids deserve a high quality education, and not a single one of us can look a parent in the face and tell them that remote learning gives them that promise. It just simply is not true. So we have to work hand in hand. Our parents are looking at us. They want to see that adults are in the room and that we're doing everything within our power to make sure our kids are safe. And this district is committed to doing just that. But as I said earlier, we have to move past the debate on whether or not we should be reopening schools and work together to reopen our schools safely. And with that, I'll take questions, or we'll take questions.
Yeah, why don't you go first? Sure. So first, you say you've been waiting on the Chicago.
Who's the question for?
Who's the question for?
This is for, I guess, for you, Mayor Lightfoot.
Okay.
You say you've been waiting on the Chicago Teachers Union to come to the table today, and they say they've been waiting on Zoom since around 11 a.m.
That's just absolutely fundamentally false.
Okay, so how's your side gone on Zoom
But
today?
let me just, I don't want to skip over that.
Sure.
It's really important that people tell the truth.
So when you say come back to the table, what do
Can
you
I just
mean?
finish, please? It's really important that people tell the truth. We got written agreements yesterday at around 2:30 in the afternoon from the CTU. We waited the rest of the day and evening without any progress. Now, our lawyers have talked, but the bargaining hasn't happened. We expected to be on a Zoom today with them at 11 a.m. That never happened. When we started this press conference, that hadn't happened. We're waiting. They tell us they needed more time. Fine, but we need to meet in person. And it is shameful that someone would mischaracterize that. No one, we've been waiting, they haven't been ready, we understand that. No one instructed, as a text message run around apparently to members of the Chicago City Council, that CPS had been instructed not to participate today. That's nonsense. I'm up here telling you, we are here night and day to get a deal done. We have to get this done for our kids. So I don't understand, I really don't, why somebody would mischaracterize what's actually happened. The issues are tough and complex, no question. And we have to work to get them through, but it's not in anyone's interest to mischaracterize what's happening and what isn't happening.
So when you say come to the table, do you mean provide you something in writing and not log into the Zoom bargaining session?
I'm saying log in at least. Log in and so we can have a conversation, both sides. Okay? Yes, of course, we would like to see some written progress. That's what getting a deal is. They're not going to take our oral representation just as we wouldn't take theirs. We need written progress, but we can't even get that if we're not talking. They have to log in and be there. We have been there ready. I've talked to our lawyer today every hour on the hour, and sometimes more frequently than that, saying, have they called yet? Are you talking yet? And what I keep hearing is, they tell us we need more time. So the notion that somehow they've been sitting on a Zoom and we haven't been there, I mean, just think about that. Think about that and use common sense. That's preposterous. That's preposterous. Why would I stand up here day after day, as I have been, saying a deal is possible? A deal is possible, but it takes two to tango.
Okay, so to confirm, you were on the Zoom call today.
Say it again?
So to confirm.
Our people were on a Zoom call today.
Can you let Latanya?
Yeah, please.
The mayor's already answered the question. We have a bargaining team. We scheduled to meet from 11 to 5. At 11 o'clock, CTU informed us that they were not ready. They were reviewing the proposals and they were preparing. They never came back to the bargain. We never logged into the Zoom because they were never ready. They never indicated to us that now we're ready for the full team to come back. Our attorneys have talked about the proposals, and each time CTU stated they need more time. I was sitting there at the computer waiting on standby to join the bargaining session. It didn't happen, not because we refused to join, because CTU was not ready, which we respected that if they were working on a proposal.
Thank you. Do you expect to be back at the table later today?
If they absolutely tell us that they're ready, we will stay up all night to get a deal done. I think I said that in my opening remarks, okay? Over and over again, we want a deal done. We are ready. We are calling. We are practically begging CTU to come to the table so we can get a deal done.
This one is from Sarah Karp at WBEZ. She says, what do you tell the 70% of parents who are keeping their children remote while their teachers are being locked out of the virtual classrooms?
I think the question is, what do we tell those teachers? What do we tell those parents about the teachers who are refusing to show up to class? That's really the question. That's really the question.
Mayor, can I add to that?
Yes, please.
I talked about this a little bit in my remarks, but I think we have to stop pitting people against each other.
Yes.
This isn't about the 20% that said this or the 30. We have an obligation to give every single parent and student in this district an option, period. The other piece, and I said this, is that this is a process for reopening schools. This started last year when we closed schools. We reopened for essential things such as serving food, distributing devices, and assisting with internet connectivity. Once we thought it was safe, we had our building principals come back, our clerks come back. We've had custodian workers and other folks in the building the entire time. This is part of a larger plan. Today is just one step. We successfully opened school at the beginning of this calendar year. Successfully opened school. As I stated in my remarks, if there were concerns about that, you would have heard all about it. You would have wrote about it, okay? We're now trying to get to a place where we can reopen schools, and those plans are being thwarted for reasons that don't hold up under scrutiny. That's the simple fact. And so, again, it's not about 70, 30, or whatever percentage people throw out. It is about 100%, and that is giving every family in CPS an option.
Hannah, let's do 2 more from you and then let Kate go.
Sure. We've had questions related to this from a few different people, but a lot of parents are saying that their students haven't been served well by remote learning, or that it's just not working for their family, but they still don't want to go back in person yet. What changes is CPS considering to improve remote learning for those students?
Well, look, we have been, and I'll let Dr. Jackson, who can get into the details, we certainly understand that. We're very concerned about the social emotional effects on students. One of the things I hear from parents all the time is, my child used to be here and now they're in some different place. Sadness, depression, unfortunately, suicidal ideations. The fact that because we're not back in school, extracurricular activities aren't happening. We've got juniors and seniors who want to take the PSAT and other college advancement courses. That's been complicated because we're not back in school. There's a whole cascading effect of what happens with remote learning. We've done everything that we can to make it work as good as possible. But I'm also hearing these same challenges from parents and students at private schools that have all the resources in the world, that have extra supports for their students. It's a challenge. My daughter is facing similar challenges. My wife is at home every single day. We can and we do provide every possible support, but there is no replacement for in-person learning. And the fact that we are now over 300 days with schools being closed to in-person learning is taking a toll on everyone, and most importantly, all of our students. Dr. Jackson, if you want to add to that.
I think you nailed it.
All right, Hannah, one more from you.
Sure. With yesterday's announcement of tentative agreements on health and safety, ventilation, contact tracing, and health committees, can you explain what parts of these agreements have and have not already been implemented? And with everything that has been agreed to, will schools be ready to open under those conditions tomorrow?
Again, schools have been open. As Dr. Jackson just said, schools have been open all year. They've never closed. And most of those agreements that were reached yesterday have been implemented by CPS months ago.
Could you please explain what's new in the agreements and whether, could you please explain what's new in those agreements and whether those will be in place tomorrow?
And Latanya can follow up too.
As I said, most of them have already in place.
I think we documented things around the safety committee, which we think is extremely important. You know, there are a lot of concerns about people implementing the mitigation strategies with fidelity. Where do you report, non-compliance, et cetera? So that's a place where we were able to narrow things down. Of the outstanding issues, I think it would be inappropriate to bargain here at the podium, but we have made it clear that we are open. We are open to having a discussion, which is why we were waiting today patiently for a response to the comprehensive proposal that we've given to them. I think the ball is in CTU's court to tell us what it's going to take in order to get us back in school. But on some of these key issues, it has been an all or nothing approach. You cannot negotiate without compromise. There are things that I have agreed to that I did not want to agree to, but I want students in school more than I want to be right. Everybody has to be in the same position. Unfortunately, we're not there. There's some people who prefer to be right than to have our kids in school.
All right, Kate, let's do a few from you.
All right. This question is for the mayor. Yesterday, Mayor, you mentioned that there was progress made. How does today differ from yesterday? What changed? And could you tell us what?
Because we haven't made any progress since yesterday afternoon, despite the fact that we engaged we really never stopped engaging yesterday. We kept waiting for more progress. We gave them some very specific things that we thought were easier to make agreement on and make some progress. And we asked for that to happen by midday, so we would be here reporting to you that more progress had been made. Nothing's happened. As Chief McDade said, we've sat all day long waiting for CTU to come back to the to the virtual table, to open up the Zoom so we could have dialogue. There's been dialogue today, but just lawyer to lawyer and nothing else. We've got to keep making progress every day. That's critically important. Our parents, our students, our entire city is watching this event. We've got to demonstrate, because we can, that we're actually making progress. We don't have anything new to report since yesterday midday when we announced those 4 agreements. That can't happen after 70+ meetings every single day for the last 2 weeks. We've got to make more progress. There's got to be a greater sense of urgency on the part of CTU leadership. And I would encourage those members who are contacting me, contacting Dr. Jackson, contacting Chief McDade, who say we want to come back. And that is teachers writing us to tell us that they want to come back. We encourage you to be in contact with your leadership to encourage them to come back to the table and respond to the specific proposals that we have put on the table for the remaining open issues. If that happens, then we've got to make progress every day, every day.
Could you go into detail about those remaining open issues?
Well, look, I don't want to, as Dr. Jackson said, I don't want to bargain here at the table, but they remain, the big issues are vaccination. We put together a comprehensive proposal. Where's Allison? Drafted by the foremost expert in our city, one of the foremost experts in the nation. We're waiting for a response from them. We still have issues, not with the folks who've already gotten their accommodations, the people that personally have underlying health conditions, the people who are primary caretakers for for people with underlying health conditions. We started that process with them in October and then re-upped it again in November. And it's happening on an iterative basis. So we've made thousands of accommodations. CTU has come to us and said, we need more, and we are still working through what that's going to look like. That's an important issue. It's important to all of us. It's important to CTU. But we've got to actually talk to each other to be able to reach an agreement and see where we can narrow the gaps. That's what conversation and negotiation is all about. But if we're standing there looking at a blank computer screen and nothing's happening, we're not narrowing those divides.
This next question is for you, Mayor, and Dr. Jackson. Now, what happens to teachers who don't show up, aside from cutting off access to Google Suite? Will there be any other consequences?
Look, my hope is that we never get to that point. That's not something we should even be forced to even talk about. We shouldn't get to that point. We should get a deal done. We should get a deal done. If people really want that in the CTU leadership, we should get it done. We can get it done. I'm standing here doing everything that I can. I am talking to everybody that I possibly can because we need to get a deal done for our students and our families. So I hope that we never even have to get to that point. That's my sincere hope. Teachers, we need you to come back.
Hey, let's do 2 more for me.
Yeah. I have one more, and it's from Dana Kozlov from CBS 2. Chicago's side streets are almost impassable due to the snow. Are you concerned about people being able to get to the schools, including buses, if in-person learning, in fact, begins tomorrow?
Well, we are working, obviously, the Streets and Sand has been out since about 2 o'clock yesterday. They've worked around the clock. They're going to continue to work around the clock. Obviously, we're having a significant amount of snow, thankfully not Snowmageddon of 2011. I remember that very well. But there's a lot of snow on the streets. There's no question about it. And the main arteries, I've been out in the streets today, are actually very passable. Now we've got to turn our attention to the side streets. But the main streets are open. And obviously, the CTA is fully operational. I don't know if you want to speak more to that, Dr. Jackson, or not. See how she keeps deferring to me? All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.